Gilbert Gottfried built a career out of the joke that never quite stops. A voice so deliberately abrasive, it became its own art form. Tupac Shakur packed more contradictions into 25 years than most people manage in a lifetime. Poet, provocateur, symbol. Freddie Mercury performed like the stage was the only honest place left in the world. Amy Winehouse gave everything she had to the song, and the distance between the gift and the cost was where her legend lives. Burt Bacharach wrote melodies that felt inevitable the first time you heard them, as if they had always existed and he simply found them. James Earl Jones proved that a voice, just a voice, could carry the full weight of authority, warmth, and menace in the same breath. There is a scene, maybe the most quoted scene in American cinema, where a man stands alone in front of a mirror and asks, "You talking to me?" No one told Robert De Niro to do that. No one wrote the mirror. No one scripted the escalating menace or the pistol drawn from nothing. He invented it. On the set of Taxi Driver, with Martin Scorsese behind the camera and Harvey Keitel down the hall, De Niro built that moment out of solitude, obsession, and a kind of creative violence that the audience has never fully recovered from. That scene did not come from talent. It came from a system, a private, punishing, almost monastic approach to performance that De Niro had been building since he was a teenager in Lower Manhattan, and that he has never fully explained to anyone. That gap between what you see on screen and what it cost to get there is the story of Robert De Niro. He was born on August 17th, 1943, in Greenwich Village, New York City, to two painters, Robert De Niro Sr., a respected abstract expressionist, and Virginia Admiral, a poet and artist. It was a household of serious art, but not stability. His parents divorced when he was 2. He was raised largely by his mother in Little Italy, a neighborhood that would later become the texture of half his greatest roles. He was a shy, introverted child. Friends in the neighborhood actually called him Bobby Milk because of his pale complexion. That kid and the man who would detonate careers with a single glance seem like two different people, but they are not. He started studying acting as a teenager, first at the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan, then dropping out entirely to commit to the craft full-time. He studied under Stella Adler, one of the most rigorous acting teachers in American history, and later at the Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg, the cathedral of method acting. In that tradition, the actor does not perform emotion. They excavate it. They find the psychological and physical reality of another human being and inhabit it from the inside out. For most students, that remains theory. For De Niro, it became a life's practice, and eventually something closer to a compulsion. His early film work in the late 1960s and early 1970s showed flashes of what was coming. Brian De Palma cast him in a handful of pictures. He was present, watchable, clearly gifted. But the films were small, and the world was not paying attention. What changed everything was Bang the Drums Slowly in 1973, where he played a dying baseball catcher with such unshowy tenderness that people leaned forward in their seats. Roger Ebert wrote about it. Critics noticed. Then, that same year, Mean Streets arrived, and the conversation changed permanently. Mean Streets was Martin Scorsese's breakthrough, but it was also De Niro's detonation. Playing Johnny Boy, a reckless, self-destructive kid who refuses to take anything seriously because taking things seriously might kill him, De Niro was electric in a way that had no safe container. He was not acting danger. He was channeling something that felt genuinely untethered. Scorsese and De Niro recognized each other immediately. Two Italian-American kids from Lower Manhattan who understood instinctively what those streets felt like, what honor and shame and neighborhood loyalty cost. That recognition became one of the most important creative partnerships in film history. Then came The Godfather Part 2. Francis Ford Coppola's sequel needed an actor to play the young Vito Corleone, the same character that Marlon Brando had made legendary, and make the audience believe they were watching the origin of something mythic. De Niro did not try to imitate Brando. He studied the older man's mannerisms, the weight of his stillness, the architecture of his silence. And then he built something new from the inside. He learned Sicilian dialect. He traveled to Corleone, Sicily, to feel the landscape. He spent months constructing a walk, a vocal register, a set of gestures that felt like they could grow into what Brando had created. In 1975, he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He was 31 years old, and he had not even made the film that would define him. Taxi Driver arrived in 1976. Travis Bickle, insomniac, Vietnam veteran, loner, proto-vigilante, was a character that could have been repellent, a cautionary footnote. De Niro made him terrifying and human at the same time. He got a taxi driver's license. He drove cabs in New York City at night, in character, for a month before filming began. He lost weight until his frame was skeletal under the army jacket. He read the diaries of Arthur Bremer, who shot presidential candidate George Wallace, not to imitate a killer, but to understand the specific loneliness that makes a person capable of anything. The result was nominated for the Palme d'Or at Cannes and changed what American audiences understood acting could be. 2 years later, The Deer Hunter. Michael Cimino's devastating portrait of working-class men destroyed by the Vietnam War required De Niro to be the still center around which everything collapsed. He was. Then came 1980, the year that still stands as the summit. Raging Bull. Jake LaMotta, the most physically and psychologically demanding performance of De Niro's career, and arguably the most demanding in American cinema. Scorsese and De Niro made a film about a real middleweight boxing champion, a man of extraordinary physical skill and catastrophic emotional violence, and they refused to explain him or redeem him. De Niro trained with LaMotta himself for over a year. He gained 52 pounds for the later scenes, a deliberate physical transformation that was reported widely and still discussed in acting schools today. But the weight was not the performance. The performance was the interior landscape, the paranoia, the sexual jealousy, the self-destruction that LaMotta aimed outward until it ate everything around him. De Niro won the Academy Award for Best Actor. When he gave his speech, he was quietly composed, as if the real work had already happened, and the award was just paperwork. What is almost never discussed is the cost at a human level. Method acting of that intensity, the kind that requires a person to actually drive a cab, actually gain 50 pounds, actually learn to box to professional standards, is not a sustainable lifestyle. It is closer to repeated, controlled damage. The actor disappears into someone else for months, maybe years, and then is expected to return to a normal life and a normal self. De Niro has never been particularly forthcoming about the personal toll of that process. In interviews across 5 decades, he has been famously guarded, deflecting personal questions with monosyllables and uncomfortable silences. The public version of Robert De Niro, the myth, the icon, the man who could stare through a camera lens and make you feel exposed, is not the private version. On that, he has been consistent. His personal life has been marked by the same contradictions. He was married to actress Diane Abbott from 1976 to 1988. They have a son, Raphael. He was married to actress and singer Grace Hightower from 1997 to 2018, with whom he has 2 children, Elliot and Helen. He has 7 children in total, a fact that surprises people who associate him so completely with solitude and intensity. His relationships with his children have played out in the tabloids at times, particularly in recent years. He has spoken in interviews about the complexity of being a father, while also being someone whose entire identity was built around total commitment to work. That is not a contradiction he has resolved neatly. It is one he appears to live with. Through the 1980s and 1990s, De Niro operated at a level almost no other actor in Hollywood could match. The Untouchables, Midnight Run, Goodfellas, as Jimmy Conway, the character who dances between menace and warmth so quickly that you can never quite land on what he is. Cape Fear, Heat, opposite Al Pacino in the coffee shop scene that had been discussed since 1971, when they both appeared in The Godfather, though they never shared a scene. When they finally sat across from each other in that diner, in Michael Mann's masterwork, the audience felt the weight of what the previous 20 years of parallel greatness had been building toward. He won his 2nd Academy Award for Best Actor for Cape Fear. No, correction. De Niro received a Best Actor nomination for Cape Fear, but did not win. He had already won his 2nd Oscar earlier for Best Actor for Raging Bull. He was also nominated for Cape Fear, Goodfellas, and received multiple other nominations across his career, underlining a body of work that critics and peers have consistently placed among the most sustained achievements in the history of American screen acting. In 1993, De Niro made a move that was both a creative act and a declaration of territory. He co-founded the Tribeca Film Festival and the Tribeca Productions Company, anchoring his business identity in Lower Manhattan, the neighborhood where he grew up. The Tribeca Film Festival, which he built with Jane Rosenthal following the September 11th attacks in 2001, was explicitly designed to help revitalize downtown New York through art. It became one of the most prestigious independent film festivals in the world. That decision to bet on community, on neighborhood, on a city that had just been traumatized, says something about him that the roles do not. The later part of his career brought something unexpected: comedy. Meet the Parents in 2000 revealed that De Niro had a precise comic timing that he had been hiding for 30 years. The film was a massive commercial hit. He leaned into it. Analyze This, the Fockers franchise, The Intern, films that made enormous amounts of money and required a very different kind of self-awareness than Travis Bickle. Some critics found this disappointing. Some found it humanizing. What it actually demonstrated was range and a willingness to be seen as something other than terrifying. Whether that was a creative choice, a financial one, or simply the evolution of a man who had been intense his entire life and needed to breathe, he has not said. What has never disappeared is the baseline standard. Even in films that did not deserve him, and there were some, De Niro's presence has a specific gravity. There is a reason younger actors cite him the way musicians cite records. Michael B. Jordan has talked about studying De Niro. Leonardo DiCaprio, who worked with him in This Boy's Life when DiCaprio was still a teenager, has described watching De Niro work as a kind of education that no school offers. Bradley Cooper, who worked with De Niro in Silver Linings Playbook in 2012, has said in interviews that De Niro was more prepared, more focused, and more demanding of the scene than anyone else on set. That was 2012. De Niro was 69 years old. Silver Linings Playbook gave him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. At an age when most actors of his generation had moved into ceremonial roles, he was still competing, still specific, still arriving on set with homework done. The Irishman, in 2019, directed again by Scorsese, was a 3.5-hour meditation on memory, loyalty, aging, and regret. De Niro played Frank Sheeran, alleged mob hitman, teamster, old man alone in a nursing home, across decades of screen time, using digital de-aging technology for the earlier scenes, while carrying the moral and physical weight of the final act entirely on his face. Critics who had written about him for 40 years found themselves writing about him with fresh urgency. He received another Academy Award nomination. He was 76. In recent years, De Niro has become more publicly vocal in ways that are unusual for a man who spent decades giving nothing away. He has been outspoken about American politics, particularly about Donald Trump, in terms that leave no ambiguity. He appeared at the 2024 Democratic National Convention. He has spoken at press events in Cannes about the state of democracy. He has accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award at Cannes in 2024. Whether you agree with his positions or not, the willingness to spend accumulated cultural capital on a public political stance is a departure for a man whose public silence was always a form of armor. Something shifted. At 80 years old, he appears less interested in protecting the myth and more interested in saying what he thinks before there is no more time to say it. He became a father again at 79. His seventh child, Gia Virginia Chen De Niro, was born in April 2023. He spoke publicly about the joy of it and about the strange arithmetic of fatherhood at that age. There was nothing carefully managed about it. It was a man speaking plainly, in real time, about something that surprised even him. Robert De Niro is still working. The mythology is intact, but it is not the point anymore. The point is what the work actually was. 40-plus years of arriving on set with total commitment, of disappearing into other people with a discipline that bordered on self-erasure, of building a standard that the industry still uses to define seriousness. The mirror scene in Taxi Driver was improvised, but it was not accidental. It was the product of a person who had made a deal with Kraft that did not have an exit clause. That deal is still in effect. The cost of it is his to account for. What the rest of us are left with is the work, and the work is extraordinary.